I'm Jeff, and I'm from Antimatter, and just introducing a new module in Eurorack format that's called the Brain Seed. And what it is it's a little step recorder. So it records values, CV values, and then plays them back. So just kind of going down the module, it has a CV input, which takes in values from, it could be a keyboard, could be recording from another sequence or an LFO or anything like that. It's got a length mode, so you can tell it how many steps to record because it's a step recorder. So by default, it just records however many steps you want to, up to 1,000 steps. And so for however long you tell it to record, that's how many steps it records, and then it plays them back. And you can also switch it with a little switcher. You can switch it into fixed mode, so you can do 8-step mode, 16-step mode, or 32-step mode. And in those modes, you can go in and drop into the sequence, and you can change the notes on each one, or the values on each one. And going next down, you've got the reseed button, which is also an input, which just tells the brain seed to start recording. And that also acts as a toggle switch, so you can toggle it into telling it to not record when it gets a gate in. Next thing down is you've got the cycle input, and the cycle input is just a clock input that tells the sequence to progress. So every time you get a clock in, it's going through. So if you've got 16 steps, it's going through like this. And you can change the modes so that the cycle goes in pendulum or bounce mode, so it goes through the sequence forward and then backwards. And then there's also a random step mode. And in random step mode, you're just selecting a different step each clock cycle still, but you're selecting a random value that you've already recorded. So you know the values, but the order of the selection is random. And then the last mode is CV scrub mode. And in that mode, you can put in an LFO or an envelope, something that has a smooth curve, and you'll scrub through the buffer of the brain seed and select the different steps. So, you can imagine if you're putting in an LFO and it's going up on the curve, like in a sine wave or a ramp or anything like that, that you're going through the buffer and selecting different steps. And next down, there is a simple quantizer, and this quantizer just, what a quantizer does is it just kind of forces the values into semitones so that they're actual notes. And it has different settings. It has off, because some people, when they're using it for modulation, they don't want to use the quantizer. So you have off, and then you have on, which is just semitones, and then you have major notes only, and then minor notes only. And then there's a little LED that gives you the output level, and then on the bottom there's a trigger output, and that sends out a trigger every time a new step is selected. So if you're going in cycle mode regularly with a clock, that's every time you get a clock input. But if you're going with CV mode and you're scrubbing through the buffer, that means that if you're using an LFO or anything like a random generator, as you go through different steps, then you're going to get kind of cacophonous bursts of triggers. So you can use that to open envelopes and so forth. So I've got a simple connection right now. I've just got it set up with a keyboard, so I can just enter some notes from the keyboard. And I've got it in the variable step mode. So when I record steps, it'll just record however many steps I play, and then it'll just loop through them. And a couple other things I missed real quickly. There's a freeze input, which just, it's a gate input, so when a gate goes high, it kind of just stops wherever it is and holds. It doesn't sample a new value. It stays on that value, and it also doesn't put out a trigger. And then on the top right is a shift input, so you can actually shift the sequence as it's playing, almost like an arpeggiator, so you can kind of move around with it. And then we've got a little clip light up at the top, which is really handy because a lot of times on quantizers, you're out of range. This one's a -5 to a +5 range module in voltage, and that way you know if you're railing against the bottom or the top of the range, and it makes it a lot easier to tell. So. I'm going to plug in just the output of an envelope to scrub through it. Which I can also do with just a regular voltage output. Like so. So it's just a simple module that lets you do sequencing. You can use it as a simple quantizer. You can use it as a sample and hold. Also, when nothing is plugged into the main input, the CV input, and you're cycling through and you turn on, you get random values, so it's a step random generator. So that's the basics of the module. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, well that's the brain seed from Antimatter. And it will be coming out, I'm hoping, the beginning of the year. We're going through a final beta phase right now, and we're hoping to have it out beginning of next year. So that's it.